Hi, boosters. Welcome to the Boosted Volunteer webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about Booster Club fundraising and how to maximize your results. Let's get started. If you join us in our live webinar series, you have the opportunity to collaborate with other boosters, ask questions in our live chat Q&A, and also we have a special offer for those who attend our live webinars. So if you have the opportunity, please join us. You can find our schedule at boosterhub.com or any of the social media platforms. We also advertise the date and time of the live webinars. One of the most frightening things that I hear from boosters is we did a fundraiser that cost us more than we raised. Well, this is absolutely not what you want to happen when you're talking about Booster Club fundraising. So, today we're going to talk about ways to prevent this, how you can plan and select the ideal fundraising type, and how to implement that, and then how to maximize the results. So, we're going to talk about 3 different types of fundraisers today, and we'll walk through each one of those. So let's take a step back and talk about the current fundraising landscape. So currently, donors have fatigue. Across the board, donors are being asked for money, whether it's from your program, other sports or activities at your school, in your community, or even nationally. We're also limited on volunteer resources. Every booster club I talk to says, we need more volunteers. We need more volunteers. And last, program costs are rising. They're getting higher and funding's getting less. So the priority for booster clubs to fundraise is greater than ever. But the good news is there's great opportunity. About $2 billion a year is raised by school support organizations. So all you have to do is go out and get your little piece of that pie. Donors are willing to support students in their activities. And so all you need to do is figure out how to get them to support your activity. And some success factors, some ways to do so are your timing, your method, and your execution. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So, we're going to look at 3 types of fundraisers: events, product sales, or perhaps spiritware, and online peer to peer fundraisers. So, let's start with events. So, when we talk about fundraising events for booster clubs, we're typically looking at season kickoffs or dinner nights or things like that, or themed events like a gala or an auction, or a chili cook-off or casino night. Those would all be events that your program has put on, typically involve selling tickets, having some decorations, maybe getting some auction items, then having some facility or rentals expenses and food expenses. We also can put in there tournaments, races, competitions, and concerts, which are pretty similar. They're going to have slightly different components, but basically you're selling tickets to come to something, and then there's a set of expenses that go along with it. So I think you can really group those all together. So, event fundraising is best when you're trying to build community or gain recognition for your program. It's best when you have strong volunteer support. So, to put on any event, you need a pretty good sized committee, 3 to 5 people. Typically, who aren't your booster club officers, because the workload's pretty heavy to put on an event. It takes a lot of volunteer hours. Just on the day of the event, you're looking at about 6 to 8 hours for each volunteer. So you're already in the 30, 40, 50 volunteer hours just to put on an event. If you need high visibility fundraising, so you want to really get your name out there, get your program out there, events are a great option because it gives people in the community something to do. They can attend. You can then share the story about your program, what's happening with your students. And that's a great way to build community support for your program. And then finally, events, typically a lot of them have tradition behind them. And this is a great thing to build on. I think of tradition as like a building block. So we've always done this great dinner. That's great because people are really used to coming to it. But let's just start layering it and kicking it up a notch and adding some things to help maximize the results of that tradition. So when we look at event fundraising, we want to look at some specific success metrics. So the first one we want to talk about is the net profit. So this is going to be your total revenue minus your total expenses. So a lot of people go, "Oh my gosh, we did such a great fundraiser. We raised $28,000." Well, if your costs were $32,000, it wasn't a very good fundraiser. You also want to look at the volunteer hours required. If it takes hundreds of hours to put on this event, you may be better off doing some other type of fundraising. You also want to look at community engagement metrics. How many people from outside of your organization bought tickets or attended? And then finally, you want to look at the year over year growth potential. Again, we go back to like that tradition event. If you can grow your audience for that event every year, and this year you sold 100 tickets, but next year you sell 125 and the year after that 150, that's a great way to build momentum with an event. So we're going to dive in here and look at some metrics. So I put together a fundraising ROI calculator, so return on your investment. So let's take a look at this. So in any event, you're going to have your ticket sales, and then you're going to have sponsorships, and then you may get items donated for an auction or a raffle, and then you may have some other type of revenue, a paddle raise or something like that. So you'll want to put together an estimated calculator of what your event's going to do and then track it against your actual. We've put some expenses in here and put in, sort of the typical range. And then at the bottom, it shows, your net profit and your return. And then down at the bottom, you'll see the per volunteer hour, how much money you raised. And so, really, when we're talking about a nonprofit, it's about how many hours did somebody have to put in to get this money. And so, anything over $50 an hour is a pretty good fundraiser. But of course, you want to try to maximize that result. The numbers that I have put in here are from an actual event that I did, and I just wanted to break this down. So, this event was for not for a booster club, but for a local nonprofit, and we were really excited about the event. We had pretty good attendance, but we decided not to do an auction and not to do a paddle raise, and to just do one big ask for donations. And it didn't go very well. So we didn't build any momentum at the event. And we thought that we had some great stories being told. We had, this is for a class that builds airplanes. And so we had some of the airplanes there and some of the students, and the attendees were able to do some of the building of the airplanes at the event. So we thought this is going to be great. But what we didn't recognize was that when people start donating, other people donate just because of the momentum. And so we had done the donations silently on a card, and no one could see that other people were donating. And we just missed that snowball effect for the event. The event technically was profitable. We raised about $30,000. However, we brought in $35,000 of sponsorships, and all of those sponsors probably would have given that money to the program without the event. And because of that, we actually, I call it a loss, because we raised less than we actually raised in sponsorship money. And for the volunteer hours involved, it wasn't very effective. However, our plan was that this would be the first year of this event. And then the next year we would build on it and have some momentum. And the next year we hit COVID, and we didn't get to have the second year event. And so the event never took off as a tradition event. I think if it had, we would have turned the corner and this event would have become successful. But those are the kind of things you want to look at when you're putting on an event, and really try to make sure that you're getting a big return for those volunteer hours. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to give you a QR code to download this calculator so you can use it yourself. Some of the places where you can really make a difference when planning your event are the venue and food and beverage. Those are typically your biggest costs. So if you can find a place that'll donate the venue or use a school facility, something like that, or a community facility, you can really impact the event cost or the venue cost. And then food and beverage. When people are attending booster club events, they don't really expect outstanding food. So my advice is Go for basic, simple, good food as cheap as you can get it. And if you can get it down to 8 or 10 bucks a plate, then you really have room in your ticketing price to cover those costs. That's another thing I recommend is make sure your ticket price covers your fixed expenses like food and venue and things like that, so that anything that you do in an auction or sponsorship is raising money for the program, not going to cover those fixed costs. Rather fixed costs, those costs that you have per person attending. But yeah, you can really get creative with the food and beverage. I think we found in the volleyball booster club in 3 different years we used 3 different caterers, and the price difference was double. So the first year we were paying about $18 to $19 a plate, and as we went out and looked at different vendors, we were able to bring that cost down to about $8 or $9 a plate. And when you're doing 100 people or 125 people, that saves you $1,000 to $1,200. So you really want to take a look at those things. And then also on decorations, if you have other booster clubs or other programs at your school, if you can share decorations for events, and you don't need to share the ones from this year, but maybe they have some decorations from last year, you can really save a lot of money on decorations as well. Let's take a look at event fundraising success strategies. So, first of all, we talked about the volunteer load. I don't think that you can pull off a successful event without having a committee specific to that event. And typically in a booster club, I would recommend that these are not your officers, that this is some other volunteer who's passionate about the program, who's willing to lead this event. And that's because the workload for putting on an event is so much, it's hard to balance that with also leading the booster club. Typically, you'd want to see a committee of 3 to 5 people, particularly with 1 or 2 very, very powerful volunteers leading that committee. You'll want to create an event calendar throughout the year, so you can see where your event may fall versus other events, perhaps at your school or your community. And you'll want to think about things like holidays, and then also things like if you have your event on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you're probably going to be able to get that venue cost way down. And since it's a school function, you could usually get away with having it during the week. So that kind of rolls into set a strategic date. If you really plan your dates well, you can really save some money, and you can also boost your attendance. For particularly our sports and our marching band programs, start of your year, the start of your season is the best time to hold that kickoff event. If you're going to do like a kickoff dinner, people are excited about the program and they really want to donate. The other time that you could think about is if your program's going to some sort of competition and they've done well, perhaps do a going away event or a see them off event, and that can really help boost your fundraising because there's some excitement, there's some momentum. So try to build on that. When you're doing an event, you want to make specific volunteer roles. And if you can do this before you form the committee, because perhaps you've done this event in the past, it really helps your lead volunteer just come in and fill those positions, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You're going to want to make a specific communication plan around your event. So you're going to want, what's going to happen a month before and 3 weeks before and 2 weeks before and the week of. Make sure you've got ticket sales promotion in there. You've got, hey, donate to our event promotion in there, attend the event. The event's coming up in a few days. So, you really need to have 7 to 10 communications about your program, about your event going out to your members and your surrounding community. And then you'll want to track your metrics and review post event and see what you can do better. And that's where that calculator can become really important. Let's talk about product sales and spiritware. Just as an aside, we did a webinar last month on merchandise, and that's really a deep dive into maximizing the results into product sales and spiritware. We're just going to touch on it tonight from the fundraising perspective. But if you want to really deep dive, check out our other webinar on Booster Club merchandise. So Spiritware is the best option when you need consistent, predictable income over a period of time. So if you want to sell things throughout the year, you want to fundraise throughout the year, Spiritware and products are a great way to do that. It also helps build school pride. It helps build recognition of your program. So it's great for doing those types of things. If you have limited volunteer capacity, this is a great way to do it, especially if you go with the print on demand method. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And again, if you need to fundraise throughout the year and not just at a specific time, product sales and spiritware is a great way to go. So when we're looking at product sales and spiritware, some of your key metrics are profit per item sold, your profit margin, and the volunteer hours required. Again, that's something you want to think about. How much time does it take for somebody to design a product, get the product fulfilled and delivered to the donors, and take that into consideration when you're making your spiritware plan. So we've got a calculator here, and we're just going to look at one item, t-shirts. So the cost of the item is $10 and it's selling for $20. So our profit per item is $10. If we sell 100, then we're going to make $1,000 here. We've got our revenue and our profit. And then if we look down here and we say, okay, we've got volunteer hours of 3 hours invested, that's a pretty good return on our spiritware. One of the things that I see that happens with spiritware, and I've used this calculator to show it, is that, well, we ordered 100 units, but we only sold 21. Well, that becomes a problem. So now you've actually lost money rather than raising money for the Booster Club. So when you're working on spiritware, you want to have a really good estimate of how much you're going to sell. And you may want to consider what we call print on demand spiritware. And that means you can put it on your website and you don't actually buy it until somebody orders it. And so that prevents the potential of having any loss on your spiritware. So the only time that I recommend really buying a whole bunch of spiritware and selling it is if you have an event coming up. And even then, I would buy about 20% less than you think you might sell. So you can sell out at the event and then offer a QR code for people to order online and have it delivered to their house with a print on demand solution. So, some success strategies for spiritware is keep your product selection simple. We like to deal with about a dozen products. So, you want about 70% of those to be your consistent sellers, your t shirts, your hats, your hoodies, 20% to be seasonal items. So, perhaps it's a playoff shirt or a season kickoff shirt or a holiday shirt, and then 10% of your items could be something you're just trying out to see if your audience likes the item. Consider print on demand, especially if your volunteer time is limited. And make sure that if you are selling spiritware online, you are putting links to that in every communication out to your club. So if you're emailing or texting or using an app, oh, by the way, spiritware available at this link. You can buy the season t-shirt at this link. You want to use every opportunity to promote that, to build that momentum, to sell that spiritware to your audience. Now we're going to look at peer-to-peer digital campaigns. So these are those online fundraisers where your student or your player submits 10 or 20 contacts, and then they get a link to donate to the program. What's really great about these types of fundraisers is they grow exponentially. So as soon as you take 100 students and you ask them all to send it to 10 people, you're now talking about potential donors of 1,000. So your audience grows very quickly, and it's what makes these type of fundraisers so powerful and so successful. These are really great options when you need to reach beyond your community. You know, it's the beginning of the year, you're a marching band, you've already got your band fees and your travel fees, and your families are worn out. Now it's time to ask them to ask their families and neighbors and friends and contacts. Because let me tell you, grandma will always donate if she gets a request from the grandkid to donate. So you want to try to get beyond your immediate community. These are also really great if you have a story to tell, and we all do because we're all doing great things for the students. So share what your program's doing. A good online fundraising platform will give you an opportunity to share your program story, and each individual student can share their story as well. These are also great if you have a savvy social media audience. So your members and families are on all the social platforms. They can just share these links, and then this community is not just grown to 1,000, but now we're 2,000 or 3,000 because they've shared with their digital communities. These online platforms also provide very quick fundraising turnarounds. So some of these programs, you can get donations today and it's in your bank tomorrow. So you really want to think about that in terms of when do you need the money. Some of the other options, you have an event way out here, you may not get the money till after the event's over. And if you are looking for online fundraising platforms, make sure you're looking for one that gets you the money quickly. You don't have to wait 90 days and get a check. And then online peer to peer fundraising, it's best for when volunteers are limited. You can put 2 to 3 hours into a peer to peer fundraising campaign and get huge results versus 40 or 50 hours spent doing an event, or even 10 hours managing spiritware. So that's why these fundraisers are so popular, because there's such a good return on the volunteer hour. Let's look at the key metrics of a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. So first of all, the number of donors per participant. So this means if you have 100 students, you want them all to invite 20 contacts. If they can't invite 20, get them to 10. That's what grows your audience and helps boost those donations. You want to look at the average donation size. If it's $25 per donor, could we get that to 30? Can we, change our levels and not offer 25 and maybe only offer 30? You want to look at the total raised per participant. So this is how much each student's raising. Are the students really putting in the 5 or 10 minutes that it takes to do this? And are their results growing? And which students are outperforming other students? And what are they doing? And can you duplicate that result? And then, of course, how much you raised overall in the rally. Here again is our fundraising calculator. So here's just a sample of the number of participants, the numbers of donors per participants, and then the amount raised per student. So we've got an estimated and an actual. I think what's really powerful about this particular calculator is the return per volunteer hour. When we're talking about 2 to 3 hours max to put on one of these fundraisers from start to finish, you're looking at huge return on the volunteer hour. And then also very limited cost. So you're going to have likely a platform fee or perhaps some credit card fees, but that's only if you actually get donations. So you don't have that cost if you don't. And then if you do some prizes or incentives to help maximize your kickoff, you'll have that cost as well. So again, that's why these are so popular, because it's really a great return on the volunteer hour. So, some success strategies for peer to peer digital campaigns. The first is choose smart fundraising platforms. So, you want to look at the cost per platform, how soon you get the money, and then also, is the platform doing rallying for you? So, some of these platforms will advertise, hey, we're a fundraising platform, but all they're really doing is just setting up multiple websites, one for your program and one for your student. But it's not like an engine, it doesn't go to work, it doesn't rally donors on your behalf. And by rally, I mean like remind them to donate. So just make sure that you're looking at the costs, when you get the money, and making sure it's a rally engine. You'll want to make sure your participant list is cleaned up. And by this, you want to make sure you've got the students' contact information, whether it be their email or their phone number. That becomes critically important in these campaigns. You'll also want to look at your broad donor list. So this is a great thing to do. You can send these to alumni or previous donors. Just get those links out there and say, hey, we've had your support in the past. Could you donate again this year? And all you're doing is send them a link. It's really easy to do. And make that part of a broad communication plan. So again, you're going to advertise this fundraiser, 7 to 10 times to get it out there so people can see, hey, we're looking for money. We need money. And I will tell you that I was the president of our booster club for 3 years, and I have never been asked to donate since I left, and I would donate every year. So always ask your alumni, your previous year's parents. You'll want to set a date for the kickoff. So I recommend you don't have to do a live kickoff for these, but it really makes a difference. We find at Booster Hub with our Booster Bucks program, the programs that do a live kickoff outperform our ones that don't 4 to 1. So it's just amazing what that live kickoff and that little flurry of momentum does. Recommend setting goals and prizes for your top participants. So get the students excited about adding these contacts, get them to see their page, start growing donations. And we've got some strategies in an ebook. I'll give you a QR code to the end on how to do that. Again, do a kickoff in person so that you build the momentum, you get the students excited. You can do some pizza. It takes about 45 minutes, and that's included in your 3 hours of volunteer time to set this up. But you'll really see great return on it. And then make sure you're following up with personal calls or emails. We recommend the students do this. So the program, the platform will usually send out a link to everyone, but it's great if then the student calls grandma and explains the link is coming. That will help increase the donations about 2 to 1, so double the donations. And then make sure you're promoting that rally through all your communication channels. So let's go back and take a quick look at comparing these 3 fundraisers that we looked at. Now, to be fair, I didn't include a successful product sales, but you get the idea. If we would have raised $4,000 and it had 5 or 6 volunteer hours, you could get the idea of what the Spiritware would raise. So we've got our event here, which returned about $600 per volunteer hour. Let's say our product sales did about 200 to 300, and then that digital campaign does about 5,000. And so that's the big difference. That's why these digital campaigns are so powerful. However, you probably need to do a combination of all 3. So that's the really important part about fundraising is diversify. So if one thing doesn't go well, you've got some other irons in the fire, so to speak. One thing to note about product sales and Spiritware is in a lot of school districts and associations, you're limited on the number of fundraisers you can do. Typically, Spiritware doesn't count as one. So if you've done your fundraisers, you need more money, but you can't do any more, typically you can still sell Spiritware. So think about that as a good option. And so as we wrap up, you want to choose the best method that fits the timing and the requirements of your program. Plan strategically to make sure those events are successful, whether it's an event or Spiritware sale or an online fundraiser. Keep metrics to make sure you're successful. Make sure you're keeping the right metrics so you're not like, oh, we raised all this money, but we actually lost some money. And then most importantly, and I always say this in our webinars, keep it fun and encourage 100% participation. And remember that you set the tone. So if you keep it fun, people are more likely to engage and they're more likely to participate, which is what you need to get to that 100% participation. So I mentioned that we did a previous webinar on merchandise and Spiritware. It's on YouTube on our Booster Hub channel. So if you want to really do a deep dive into how to maximize Spiritware, you can find it in that webinar. And then here's a QR code for Boost Your Fundraising, our ebook. This is specifically on the online digital peer-to-peer platforms. It'll give you a deep level dive into how to maximize the results on those, everything from picking the platform to getting your participants ready to some communication samples. So it's a great book, free to download here with this QR code. We really appreciate you joining us, and check out boosterhub.com anytime if you're running a booster club or a school support organization. We offer great tools to help you maximize your results, and we hope you knock it out of the park.